Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bible Talk with Alicia. Today, we will be going over Genesis chapter 4 in 3 parts. The first part will be the War of the Kings, verses 1 through 12. Second part, Abram rescue Lot, verses 13 through 16. And the third part would be Melchizedek, verses 17 through 24. So for the first part, the War of the Kings, verses 1 through 12, I want to actually break verses 1 through 12 down in 3 parts, well, in 3 sections. So the first section will be verses 1 through 4, which is giving us a list of kings that came together to help each other. Now, they invaded the Dead Sea area and attacked the kings who had rebelled and denied payment of currency to the king Chedorlaomer. In verse 4, it tells us they served the king Chedorlaomer for 12 years, and the 13th year they rebelled. Now let's make a side note of the biblical meaning of numbers. The number 12 is symbolic of government. The number 13 is symbolic of rebellion and lawlessness. And now let's go to, I told you I want to break this down into 3 sections. So the second section will be verses 5 through 7. Chedorlaomer came in the 14th year to defeat the uprising of the rebellious with 3 other kings and conquer other cities. So what I'm doing is I'm breaking them into sections to give you a summary of each particular section. What it is that when you read Genesis chapter 14, you can get a little lost and confused. So I'm breaking it down. Now the third section is verses 8 through 12. The king of Sodom fell into a slime pit. Then the 4 kings carried the goods and the people who they captured, which included Lot. Okay, and we all know that Lot is Abram's nephew. Okay, so I'm actually done with part 1. Remember, part 1 is War of the Kings. I broke it down into 3 parts. We just went over verses 1 through 12. Okay, now what I want you to get out of verse 1 through 12, there are many things that you can get out of it, but the one lesson that I want you to get out of it is freedom. Okay, Robert Frost, who is a poet, he said freedom lies in being bold. Okay, there will come a time in your life where you are going to get fed up with people, with, individuals, you're just going to get sick and tired of their mess. You're going to get tired of people trying to enslave you by their will, their words, their strength. But one day you will wake up and you will be just like the people in the Salt Sea. And you will say, you know what? I'm done. I'm ready to be free. And where I'm getting this from is verse 4. Because they was enslaved for 12 years. But that 13th year, they got up out of there. Okay, they rebelled. Let me tell you something. I don't care how... Okay, let me say it like this. When a person is enslaved, eventually they're going to get fed up. And they are going to start rebelling because they want to be free. So what I want you to get out of verse 4 is freedom. Okay? Don't allow no one to enslave you by their will, by their words. Sometimes when you want freedom, you have to be bold. And the people of the Salt Sea, that's what they were being, bold. They rebelled. Let that man know, look, enough is enough. We've been enslaved for 12 years. Okay? We're going to cut this short. Okay? Now let's go in part 2, which is Abram rescue Lot, verses 13 through 16. And I'm also going to break this down into 3 parts. Into 3 sections. So in verse 13, one of Lot's servants has escaped from the invaders, and they located Abram, who, of course, I just said is Lot's uncle. And also the writers let us know in verse 13 that Abram is a Hebrew. In verse 14, which I'm going to read to you, let me get out my word real quick. In verse 14, and I'm actually reading from the Jeremiah Study Bible. So in verse 14, it says, "Now when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 training servants who were born in his own house, and went and pursued as far as Dan." Okay, so once Abram found out, Abram took immediate action. In verse 15 through 16, it tells us that Abram had a strategy. He divided himself and his servants at night, okay, and destroyed the enemy with only 318 of his servants. Because that's all Abram had was 318. Now let me tell you how Abram was able to defeat his enemy against the odds. And the way that he did it was God was with him. When God is with you, doesn't matter if it's just you and another person, you will win. Okay? Now, in part 2, which is, I just went over Abram rescued Lot, verses 13 through 16. The lesson that I want you to get out of this is take action and have a strategy. Okay, Abram wasted no time on acting upon his nephew being captive. Regardless of being few in numbers, he acted. And he had a strategy. He attacked at night after he divided them up. Okay, think about what he did. Think about his strategy. And really ponder on this. You know, had there been a time in your own life where people told you about an opportunity or told you about something similar to what happened to Lot, and you failed to take immediate action, or you had an action but you had no strategy, or vice versa? And everything that you do, you need to seek the Lord in all your decisions. But the main thing I want you to get out of this is verse 14. Abram took immediate action. See, let me tell you something about Abram. Abram wasted no time. Okay? He literally got up, got his men, 318 of them, and he went down there and he had a strategy. He said, look, some of y'all go over here, some of y'all go over there. And matter of fact, we're going to get them at night. Okay? And so he was able to conquer. Part 3 is Melchizedek. We're going to go over verses 17 through 24. And this, I'm actually not going to divide it into sections. I'm just going to give you a summary of verses 17 through 24. Okay, Abram is met by the king of Salem, and he's also met by Melchizedek. In verse 20, Melchizedek gives his identity when he said, you know, he is describing him, you know, as who he is. In verses 21 through 24, the king of Salem offered Abram to keep the possession as he take the people. And Abram makes it very clear, I will not take or enter into covenant relationship with you. And then also at the very end, Abram allows the men which has fought with him, you know, some of the shares. You know, he shares some of his earnings with the men that fought with him. And there's really one thing that I want you to get out of part 3, which is verses 17 through 24. And really study this. It's a lot that you can get out of it, but I want to just focus on this one lesson, and which is be upfront. Abraham was not playing with the king of Salem. He told homeboy, he said, I will not, and really I'm paraphrasing, but I will not enter into covenant with you. He said, I won't take nothing from you. I won't give you the satisfaction to say later, I've made you rich. Be honest and be upfront. You know, you really do have to be honest and upfront with wicked people. Okay, you really do. Do not accept any gift which is going to bring approach to Christ. Be wise. Okay, be wise in all situations like this. Because see, think about it. It was Abram, it was the king of Salem, and it was Melchizedek. I would say this. Let's say Abram represent human beings. You know, he is mankind. And let's say the king of Salem represent evil, the devil, Satan, Lucifer, however you want to categorize it. And Melchizedek represent Christ, God. Abram had two choices in front of him. He could either enter in a covenant with the king of Salem by taking the items and, you know, maybe paying him back later on, or he could enter in a covenant with Melchizedek. And also in verses 17 through 24, it tells you that Abram shut the king of Salem down, and then he gave a tenth of his possessions to Melchizedek. You know, and in case some of y'all don't know who he is, which it actually says in the verse, I think it's verse 23 or 24. One of them, it says, actually, no, I think it's verse 18. Let me look at my word here. It said in verse 18, it tells you that he's a high priest. Okay, that's who Melchizedek is. Now, really read it and think about it. Melchizedek, he brought out bread and wine, but also he bestowed a blessing on Abram. Abram presented Melchizedek with tenth of all the items he had gathered. Now, this is really interesting because some theologians say that Melchizedek is God himself. Some say that he is a type of Christ. And others say that he is Jesus Christ. And so that's something to ponder about. You know, what do you think? Who is Melchizedek? You know, but it tells you that he is a high priest. And his name means king of righteousness. So that's really all what I have for Genesis chapter 14. But when you read it, you really have to take your time because verses 1 through 12 can be confusion. But I try to break it down to you in sections and let you know that when you read Genesis chapter 14, you just can't read it straight through. You have to stop and think about it. But yeah, that's all I have. And if you have any comments, any questions, please leave it in the comment box below. Subscribe to my channel. Click the thumbs up button. And if there's anything that I left out, please put it in the comment box below. Or, you know, if there's anything that you want to add or anything you want to discuss about Genesis chapter 14, if you have any questions, please leave it in the comment box below. We can open up a dialogue, but it is a good chapter. All right. Talk to you later.